Hello and welcome to my channel and my video. My name is Chrissy Hodges, Certified Peer Support Specialist, working mainly with people who have OCD, and usually it's people who have the community name Pure OCD, which is also the name of my book. I do peer support consultations and referral consultations all over the world to be able to connect you to therapists who can help. Now, NoCD is an app, but they also provide telehealth, ERP treatment, and I believe right now international, so all over the world. So they are an option to get therapy through them. Go to treatmyocd.com, or you can click on the link that I'll be putting in the description here in a bit. So I have not done a video in about a week or two, and the reason why is I actually took time off, and this is one of the first times I've ever taken a full week off as an adult. And I mean, I'm 44, so that's saying a lot. And so I've always worried about taking time off because y'all know how it is when you have anxiety and you're in your head and you have downtime. It just makes things spin out of control. Well, this is what I've learned. My sweet spot is 4 days off. It takes me 2 days to calm down from thinking that I need to be doing something. That third day is kind of bliss. And then the fourth day is like, this is amazing. Day 5 and day 6 were awful. I felt miserable and unproductive. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm disconnected from the world. I'll never get back to the world. So that was interesting, but it's good to be back. I'll be doing this video today and also dropping one on you either tomorrow or Saturday. And I've missed being here and talking about OCD, and I've had a lot of ideas come up since I've had time off to think about everything. So today I want to talk about something really, really important. I do think I have a video on this as already, but this has come up a lot lately, and I've learned more about this topic since I have been doing peer support and running groups in the last year and being able to hear people's stories more in a group setting and just gotten a more in-depth understanding of what this means and how it impacts people. So I want to talk about how OCD does not have a cure and what that feels like and how that impacts people in looking and thinking about living life, being in recovery, loss of hope, having hope, all of those things. There are certain points I really want to hit. So let's get started. When I found out, I can really only speak for myself, but when I found out there was no cure for OCD, when I say cure, what I mean is you don't have OCD anymore. You have no symptoms. You don't have to worry about relapse. There's nothing you have to think about. It is over and done, and your life is OCD free, okay? That's what I mean when I say cure, okay? There's nothing OCD anymore in your life. Now, when I found out there was no cure, I felt really hopeless. I felt really sad and angry. Why me? I had all of these feelings that came up of, oh no, because at that point, I only knew suffering, right? So I was suffering all of the time. And then when I found out, well, this is OCD, but I'll never be cured of this, my first reaction was, oh my God, my whole life is going to be this awful. Because the only thing I had to compare it to was living with OCD and suffering. And we also, especially when we haven't had proper treatment or when we're reflecting back when things were really bad, we also tend to remember just how bad things were, how far down you can get, and how painful it can be, which for some people, it can also be a trauma response. So it can impact and compact that, right? So you're remembering something that was so awful. And then to find out there's no way to ever get rid of this, that can be really daunting and terrifying. Now, for a lot of people, and this is actually what happened to me, when I found that there was no cure, my choices at that point were what? Medication, evidence-based treatment. So I was lucky enough to be able to go to Phillipson at that time, about 22 years ago. He did phone sessions with me. I had proper ERP treatment. It was successful. And I also had medication when I needed it and if I needed it. And so to me, it was okay, so those are the tools, right, to manage it. Well, so regardless of knowing that there was no cure, I didn't want anything to do with OCD. And I've talked about this before on videos, but it's really important to note in this particular topic. I thought, I got tools, I'm out of here. I don't want to think about this anymore. I don't want it to come back. In fact, I'm going to believe it's not going to come back. And in those next 13 years of being in complete denial, which is a protection mechanism, so that's totally fine, OCD came and went many times, and I suffered under different themes than I had had before. I had sexual orientation OCD before I went to therapy, got treatment for that, and then I was unable to recognize it in different themes throughout the next 10 to 13 years. And the detriment was I was so bought into, well, here are the things that are going to make OCD go away and I never want to think about it again, that I was unable to manage it effectively and then suffered more. So that's kind of the point of this whole video, is talking about our perception of OCD, how we want it involved in our life, and how sometimes those things can get in our way and cause more suffering when we actually think they're doing us more good. So here's what I thought. If there's no cure, but here are the tools that I'm going to use to manage it, I refuse to believe that I can't have this wonderful life. And fuck you, OCD. Like, I'm just going to pretend like you didn't exist and that you don't exist. But here's where I went wrong on that. I didn't realize this until my 30s. I could absolutely have a good life with OCD. And acceptance, let me finish because I hate that word. Acceptance, the painful process of acceptance was going to be the way to open that life up. I thought acceptance meant I'm going to have to live this life of being mentally ill, and I'm going to my whole identity is going to be OCD, and OCD is my whole identity, and I am OCD, OCD is me, and I don't want that, and I don't want people to know, and stigma and all that. When in reality, denying that made OCD bigger in my life because I was unable to recognize it. So once I went through a major relapse in my 30s, that's when and I work with a lot of people who go through their first relapse. And this is when the emotional piece comes up. The feeling of, I can't believe this is going to keep happening in my life. I really thought that it was over. But relapse, that's why relapse is so, so important. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel important, but it's such a great teacher for us to show that, yes, this can come back up. It's going to come back up. And now I have all faculties of my brain working on how to experience this relapse instead of just clawing and surviving it. Kind of how the first time around happened for people when they didn't know it was OCD and then found out and then either sought treatment or got through it somehow. So having no cure, experiencing OCD at certain parts of your life does not mean you are set up to have a bad life. Your brain wants you to believe that. We've got to figure out how to get rid of this and then you can have a good life, right? That's what we all believe that to a certain degree. But here's the thing. The key for me in managing OCD and living a good life with OCD is understanding it is part of my life. But it doesn't have to be my identity. I don't have to wake up every day afraid of it. There have been times in the last few years that OCD has been bad and it has been wreaked havoc on my life. But overall, I don't see my life as bad because OCD is part of it every day. And it took me having a relapse, it took me really engaging in the process, the painful process of acceptance. Some days I choose not to accept, some days I do. And letting go of, I just want this to be gone, because when it's gone, that's when I'll have a good life. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It's that black and white of like, if only this were gone. my life could be good. Your life can be good, even if it's here. I mean, I'm a living example. Is life good every day because of OCD? No. But is life good every day without OCD? No. And anyone that tells you that it is, they're lying. Phillipson said that to me one time. He was like, because I was like, oh, if only I didn't have OCD, life would be good. He was like, Christy, life is shitty. And you're going to find that out. I don't think life is shitty, but I do think every day is not good, OCD or not. And a lot of acceptance is understanding that concept and learning to be present. And OCD sometimes pulls us away from that and puts us in the space of, if only I didn't have this, things would be so much different. And maybe they would, but they probably wouldn't be the utopia that you think that it would be. So here's the next point that I really want to make, and I think this is an important one. Why is it not helpful for other people to say, advocates or people who live with OCD, to say things like, oh, I've been cured, or I found the formula, or I no longer meet the criteria for OCD? Great. I think that's awesome for people. I probably on many given days don't meet the criteria to have OCD. Is it helpful for people to hear that? No. You might disagree with me, and that is okay. And it might be helpful for you to hear it at any given point in your life. Oh my goodness, that is possible to not meet criteria for OCD. Yay! Awesome. However, what happens when people say these things is it all of a sudden sets the standard. And this is so particular for OCD. It sets the standard for many people working toward recovery or getting treatment of, I have to get where so-and-so says they are, that they no longer have mental illness. They no longer meet criteria. They're cured. And if you fall short of that, guess what happens? Your OCD says, well, you're not trying hard enough, or I guess, maybe you really don't have OCD, or maybe that's not attainable. So then you can get stuck in this engine of, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong? And how do I become like this person? This is why we have to be really careful reading other people's stories, because we are naturally with OCD comparing ourselves to other people and comparing our own journey. So when you're hearing someone say, you can be like me if you only do this, you don't meet criteria, you won't have intrusive thoughts, you won't have this. I mean, it's such bullshit, right? It's unhelpful and it's unhopeful for a lot of people. Because what happens is when you do get intrusive thoughts, because everybody does. So if anyone's saying they don't get intrusive thoughts, y'all, come on. Like everybody in the world gets them. So it's just a lie. When you do get them, you all of a sudden are judging yourself based on what someone says you shouldn't have if you're cured, if you're in recovery, if you don't have mental illness anymore. This is your journey. It is unique. When we start looking at other people and what they are saying their life is like with or without OCD, we are caught in the trap of, I have to be like them, or this means OCD is ruining my life, or I'll never get there and I have to try harder. And then we judge ourselves and it takes a toll on our self-esteem. It becomes hopeless. Now, again, I want to emphasize, it is great to strive for, I want to get as better or as good as I can in managing OCD to where it feels non-existent. Yes, we all want to do that, don't we? But when we insert words that are making proclamations of what you can and should be if you just work hard enough, or if you follow my formula or whatever else, that becomes unhelpful if it doesn't work for you, because it will turn on you and make you feel like, well, there must be something wrong with me, right? So that's why I prefer to talk about recovery as an ongoing and fluid process. Where I am at 44 is not where you're going to be at 44. Where you are at right now at 25, I wasn't there at 25. And that's okay. because each one of our recovery journeys is different. Each one of us gets hit with different things in our life, right? So you can think that you're cured of OCD and you have zero symptoms from age 25 to 35, and boom, a parent dies, or you have a kid and it disrupts your life, right? In a good way, but still. And then all of a sudden OCD comes back, or all of a sudden you have intrusive thoughts, and sometimes you can't recognize them when you're in chaos or stress or grief. And then your thought process might go, uh-oh, I'm not cured. What does that mean? And you can go into that cycle. Because here's the deal. OCD comes back because it is part of how our brains work. The goal is to work every day at recognizing when it's there. And how do we do that? We recognize compulsions. I have compulsions when I'm doing my taxes. I have compulsions when I go to the grocery store sometimes. Do I see that as OCD? No, because it's not obscure and it's what lots of people would worry about. Is it though? Yeah. If I am unhealthily doing compulsions around my taxes, yes, it is. So OCD shows up for me every day. My job is to recognize compulsions and make the choice. As Greenberg says, is to choose that agency in being able to see that I have the choice and the opportunity to make decisions to reduce the symptoms of OCD. So that point is so very important. Now, you may be motivated by people that say, I have found the way, I found the cure, let me teach you, or whatever else. And if that motivates you to want to work really hard every day to not meet the criteria of having a mental illness, awesome. I think that's great. But be careful when you talk openly about that with other people that have OCD, because what happens is we naturally compare ourselves, and it can be devastating to our symptoms. We have a responsibility when we're speaking out loud as advocates and as people with OCD to not just think about ourselves and our own experience, but to be inclusive about other people's experiences and how our words might impact that. Lastly, I want to say that when we take on the idea that I want a cure for OCD, or I'm cured from OCD, or this is, and I hear this all the time with people. Well, I went for a few years and OCD wasn't there, so I just thought I didn't have it anymore. I mean, hello, we all do that and we all want that. Like, come on, please let me have a few years of non-suffering from OCD. That's what we want, right? The danger in that is forgetting how it feels, forgetting that it's a possibility that you could feel bad, and forgetting how to respond to it in a healthy way in order to manage it. I am not by any means saying if you are doing well right now, make sure you bring up OCD every day. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is understanding that it's okay to recognize that OCD is part of my life. It may be right now, it doesn't feel like it, it has been, but I am going to be mindful and ready if in case I notice that I'm doing compulsions and I'm starting to have those little crumbs that are leading to a relapse. Because when we're in the mindset of it's never going to be that bad again, or now I'm in remission, or I'm cured, or I've done this work and I'm never going to have it again. When we relapse, when the symptoms come back, we then equate that to I am a failure. I'm not good enough. What if this is the time that it's going to be so bad I can't get out of it? All of these fears start piling up on us. And the biggest one is I thought that I was okay and I thought I was cured, and now I'm relapsing in the devastation and the grief, which is a video I'm going to be doing pretty soon on. Again, I love talking about this, is the grief of having OCD. Relapse really brings those things out. The emotional connection we have to OCD, the sadness we have, grieving that this is something that may continue to come up for us in the duration of our lives. The point I'm making in all this is I know, and there's nothing I want more, and I talked to Stuart Ralph, we had a whole conversation about this at one point, And he said something, and I've pondered it a lot. He said, I just don't want to let go of the idea that one day we're going to find a cure for OCD. And at the time, I was like, in my stance, and I was like, we just need to make sure that people understand, though, that probably isn't going to happen. But I've adopted that philosophy from him. So thank you, Stu. Which is, let's keep hoping that one day we find a cure for this. Let's keep that hope alive. And when we do, I will be the first ones on the front lines celebrating with all of you. For now, we don't have that, but it's okay. And it doesn't mean your life has to be full of suffering and horrible, right? The mind shift to go from, I just want to have no OCD and it needs to be cured and all of that. If you're chasing that, that sometimes can cause suffering. And I'm not saying embrace it and wallow in it and be a victim. That is not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is sometimes accepting the circumstances that, wow, I have this disorder. It may make me sad that it could come back or that I could go through that again, but it doesn't have to define me. And I don't have to wish it away every day of my life and suffer. I can actually embrace that and choose to work toward having a good life despite having it. That is a possibility. That is what I do. There are many days that I don't meet criteria for OCD. There are many months. But OCD is part of my life, and I have a great life, and I will always continue to work toward having a great life despite living with OCD. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope you understand why I'm doing this video. The reason why is people feel hopeless when they hear, I'm cured, I don't meet criteria, you can be like me, and yet they keep working and keep experiencing symptoms. It's okay to normalize having symptoms, and it's okay if that is the case for you. You're not a failure, you're not a loser, and it doesn't mean that you can't have a great life. So thank you. It's great to be here again, and I'll drop another video on you either tomorrow or Saturday, and I look forward to it. Again, if you're looking for peer support or referrals, head on over to ChristyHodges.com, and we'll send you a calendar link, and you can jump on that. I hope to see you at some point soon.